We can do about it as developers and mostly as human beings. Really quickly, my name is Julien. I'm a developer advocate at ADN. Recently, you can find me here on Twitter, and I talk about gardening and gardening meetups, these sort of things. Few disclaimers. I am not a climate scientist, so don't hold me up on everything. And I'm going to do my best to do things in a positive manner. We can think about climate change as a very bad thing, but today we'll try to get good vibes out of it. And I'm really going to try to not point fingers, so that's not the point. There's going to be 4 parts. We're going to look at climate change, what it is a little bit. We're going to look into tech, but we're also going to spend quite some time looking into what I've thought about the last 2 years, about my own situation having kids. So before we dive into the tech part, let's look a little bit at the situation. I was born in '87, and pretty much half of the CO2 that was emitted on Earth by humans pretty much has been created since I was born. That's quite a lot if you look at how long humans go back. There's a lot of other problems we can deal with, biodiversity, these sort of things. Today we're going to mostly talk about CO2. And global warming doesn't sound so bad, but hopefully it's obvious for everyone. Global warming is kind of a bad term. The problem is not warming. The problem is, one of the problems is these jet streams, for example, if you might not know it. But those are streams that kind of really strong wind currents. They keep the cold air up and the warm air down. But as the Earth warms, those things, they kind of fluctuate, and that leads to the situations we've had this summer or this winter, for example, where trees starts burgeoning in November, in January, and then that's a big problem for winemakers. Or the other way around, we have hailstorms in August, this sort of stuff. And this really resonated to me. I can't find the source anymore, but someone said on Twitter one day, climate change is watching disaster happen on the other people's cameras, until the one filming the disaster. And to me, that really sounds, that really resonates. And also, it has like crazy effects. In case you didn't know it, the Earth actually spins faster now due to climate change. And that actually creates bugs in our software, including GPS software. And that's a very serious thing. And one last thing, talking about latency, just setting facts, know what we're talking about. But if we stopped all CO2 emissions today, it's going to take 10 to 15 years before we stop warming up. So there's like a lot of latency. It's like COVID, you don't see that it's a problem until it's too late, and you have to go home for a month. So let's get to it. Few things. I'm going to take a few examples in tech randomly from different places, front end, back end, etc. One of the things that I want to really strengthen on today is, we hear a lot reduce, reuse, recycle. Everybody says, yeah, but I'm recycling. Well, the first one is reduce, not the rest, right? It's reduce. And the first example is, infrastructure. Do we really need those 5 nines? Like, some people do. I'd argue that a lot of businesses can take, a couple hours off maybe on Friday to do their updates when everybody's having beers and barrels. That introduces a lot of redundancy, that introduces a lot of extra systems. Maybe we don't need that, I know it's fun to play with Kubernetes, but another thing is versions of tools matter. Maybe I hope this is not too small for you, but this is research, and it shows the same kind of different tasks based on different JVMs. And what they see is kind of the older JVM tends to, well, not all JVMs are equal. So depending on, if you're using all the tools, you might actually use 160% of your CPU for some of the stuff. So that's good to know. Java 8, another reason to upgrade. One that I'm very fond of, maybe you don't need a framework. A lot of people are using React by default. Maybe you don't have to inflict 0.8 seconds of loading time on your users, when you can just do the same with a lot more smaller stuff. And I'm not going to go further with that, but choice of technology matters as well. Not all technologies are created equal. Some actually cost a lot more than others. Last but not least, maybe you can talk with your PO. Some products might not be needed, like self-lacing shoes from Nike that actually have bugs where you can't actually use your shoes. Sometimes it's good to go back to the PO and say, do we really need this, by the way? If you're interested in this kind of stuff, there is Asim Hussain. He works on Microsoft. He does a lot of stuff about that. You can read more. I'm going to have to speed up just a little bit. Going back a little bit, web page size. It's increased by over 1,000% in 10 years. And one of the main reasons people change phones because their phone is sluggish. So the Consumer Bond estimates the average lifespan of a phone is 2.5 years, right? That's a problem. Why? Because 80% of the CO2 emitted by a phone is during production. So the moment you buy it, it's already 80% of the cycle. It's too late. And buying one, another way to say the same thing, buying one new phone, same energy as operating it for 10 years, right? So when you buy, it's 10 years of usage. So now it's nice tech. Let's just check. How many of you has a phone that is older than 2.5 years? Nice. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. That's awesome. Phone? Laptop? Okay, nice, awesome, really good. So not many of you bought the new MacBook Pro. I've seen a lot of craze on Twitter with the new M1 Pro Max super stuff. Maybe it's good to start exercising what you preach. That's very simple, but. So that's what I've done the last 2 years, looking into my carbon footprint. On average, Netherlands, 8.42 tons a year per person. Target, 3 tons, so we can make it to 2.5 degrees. This is small, sorry. 2 years ago, 17.4 if I measure myself. And what's interesting is to take the stuff I've talked about like a minute ago. Actually, it's only a third of what I'm emitting. A lot of stuff comes from food, massive amounts from traveling. So, well, how do you start? Basically, I started like this. It's French. I'm very sorry for that, but I wanted the reference. I started where it's very useful, making a lot of impact, and where it's easy, going down to what's hard, and you really don't want to change. So this is where we are now for me and my family, 6.2. If you look, there's not much difference. I still buy a lot of stuff. There's just, travel. Travel is making a huge difference. Thank you, remote. And the other thing is, I started growing my own food as well with the kids. So, everybody can make stuff. You can choose, first measure, then you choose. If you're passionate, maybe you can, actually feed your family. And I'm not kidding. This one has been fed pretty much with, our stuff for 10 months now. So, and for the stuff you can't compress, you can always, compensate it. It's not, it's on top of. It's not a replacement. Some extra thinking, just to place the stuff again. Anyone making over $35,000 a year today, we are one of the richest 10% on Earth, right? So if we are not the ones changing, who are we to change? Second thing that I hear quite a lot, and we see that on Twitter, etc., we're just 1% of emissions at the Netherlands. I hear that in France as well. All right, but 10% of the population, so the ones making more than 35,000, is 52% of global emissions. So you're actually making a lot more than someone in Liberia, for example. Something you also probably feel inside you is like, okay, you should do your bit, but there's people behind doing much worse and much more. This is true. Just 100 companies responsible for 75% of emissions. That is very true. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But again, looking about tech people, we buy their products. We work there, so those are things, and we vote as well. So there's a lot of things we can talk about it. And there's one more thing that's even maybe more important, because not everybody can change their business from one day to the next, but we can also impact what people are making. So if you look at, Adyen, for example, I work there, but Beyond Meat, there's a lot of people actually trying to make a difference, and while they are reinventing their business, also really actively trying to, either compensate or reduce, etc. Yeah. One more thing that I want to mention, this, Netflix is the same as eating 10 burgers or whatever thing was completely wrong. So it has been proven by now that, Netflix has an extremely small footprint. So do check your facts, including mine at the end. But it's interesting to, really look at, okay, whatever you're looking at, and maybe the most trendy tweet is not actually the facts. Few final tips looking at you now. Again, look at what's easy for you. You want to fly to Kirkon once a year, why not? But maybe you can reduce on other things, right? You don't have to do everything at once. But I haven't made sacrifices. That's the important part. We work remote now. We can do a part. Second thing, I'll give you a really practical example. Sinterklaas is coming. Maybe you can buy less stuff, buy experiences instead. A massage, everybody likes massages. That doesn't, emit anything. Okay. Most of the times. And one thing that I really find extremely important, and I can't say it better than, there's a lot of stuff online, like a lot of people feel like we're fucked. That's how a lot of people feel. It's like, this is so bad. We should not. We should really just act, basically. Like, we should be aware of how important it is and act, not dooming, because that doesn't help. And we are also at the best time to be alive, if you think about it. Babies don't die anymore out of sickness. The level of living everywhere is the best it has ever been. So don't lose hope. We just have to act and move forward. Right, so that's basically it. It's really not too late. You just need to act now by starting to reduce before recycling. Thank you. And that was 10 minutes.